lessons learned in Horizon 2020 project. My name is Patricia Jiménez and I work for NTT Data. As partners of the European project PanelFit, we are very happy today to host this online event in the NTT Data Living Lab. Please join us for a short virtual visit to our Living Lab. Please, the video.
Welcome to NTT Data Living Lab, a cutting-edge space where we promote and develop innovation through the use of new technologies, methodologies, and tools that bring value to the entire innovation cycle. Open innovation, a worldwide collaborative model, research and ideation projects, professionals with innovative ideas. Co-creation. People's diversity with their knowledge and creativity. Tech and solutions space. Technology, testing and experimentation. Tomorrow's builders. Teams specialized in disruptive technologies. Every Living Lab is now NTT Data Living Lab. Now more global to stay ahead of the game.
So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the visit. And now let's begin. So today, PanelFit is going to share with you real experiences from Horizon projects dealing with privacy and the use of AI, IoT, biometrics, geolocalization, blockchain, and robotics. The projects are in different stages, some at the beginning, some have been ongoing for some years, and others have already finished. The idea is that you can learn from them, their concerns, their challenges, and at the different stages that they are. In the end, this should be useful for your own research and innovation projects. Of course, at the same time, these experiences that we are going to hear today from the projects will enrich the work we are doing in PanelFit as well. But to better explain PanelFit, we have here today the coordinator of the project, Íñigo de Miguel, from the University of the Basque Country in Spain. Íñigo is going to provide you with an overview of PanelFit as the framework of the event and explain why today we are focusing on those technologies and projects dedicated to those technologies. Afterwards, we will meet our panel of speakers. Please, if you have any question for the speakers, you can write them on the chat and then we will address them to the speakers. So Íñigo, the floor is yours. You are muted, Íñigo.
Sorry, Patricia. Yes, indeed. Maybe it was better before, but now I got a voice. And just let me thank you, Patricia, for this introduction. Good morning, everyone. It's so good to be with you today with this exciting event. I hope that we will learn a lot from each other. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to the PanelFit project, a project that I'm coordinating together with Professor Romeo Casabona from the University of the Basque Country. And so maybe I will share my screen just to show you some insights about the PanelFit project, and so you will see more or less how it works and what it is. Yeah, here we go. Guess that you now can see my screen. So the point is that the PanelFit project is an EU-funded project. It's linked to the SWAP's Science with and for Society program of the Horizon 2020. And this is a project that started like more than 3 years ago now. We are in the last part of this project. It's finishing on 30 April 2022. And I must confess that this has been a really interesting, also a little bit exhausting project, because we have been doing lots and lots of different things, and we are creating lots of stuff that we really hope that will serve you all quite well in the future. So what is this all about? Well, the PanelFit project is a was created on a very simple idea. The idea was that the regulation on data protection was about to change at the EU level. Indeed, the Gdpr was already approved when we started with this project, but we were in that time when things were still quite unclear about how it would work. And of course, there are some new regulations that are there that are being now created, such as the artificial intelligence regulation or the data protection or the Data Governance Act and so on. And so what we are trying to do is that we really hope to create some tools that serve ICT developers and researchers to work well with this new regulation and try to help them avoid gross mistakes while developing those ICT tools. So this is more or less what we are doing. Apart from that, we are trying to provide the Commission with some insight, with some critical comments about how the regulation, the different types of regulation are working together and how things could be improved in the future. Further than that, we are also creating some other outcomes that will help citizens and journalists to deal with all these issues. So, indeed, we are producing different outcomes that I think that are clearly aimed at different goals. The first of them is what we call the guidelines on the ethical legal issues of ICT research and innovation. We are really hoping that this tool will be very effective for all those who are working in this field. These guidelines will be more or less, or are already, a kind of a handbook on how to do things well in terms of data protection issues when you are developing or incorporating a kind of a ICT tool in your day-to-day work or whatever. So we are more or less trying to help developers to work with tools that are related to five different technologies, or with data that are linked to these technologies. One is artificial intelligence, the other one is Internet of Things, the other one is biometrics. Then we get kind of geolocation data, and then we get data that comes from the social networks and so on. So that's what we are doing. We are creating a kind of online tool, very interactive. It works like a kind of a wiki, and it should serve well to help you all achieve efficiency, quality output, and uniformity of performance while reducing miscommunication and failure to comply with regulations. These guidelines will be ready by the end of the project. Indeed, they will be ready before. And for those who are interested in knowing them and helping us refine them, I can tell you in advance that we will have some events that will be held in December and January next year. And of course, you will be much welcome to help us improve them and refine them. I think Monica will introduce in the chat some links to these events or how to participate in them. So just, feel totally free. We will really thank you for being part of that. So this is more or less what the guidelines are, a kind of interactive tools that will be finally developed in 5 languages: Spanish, French, Italian, German, and of course, English. And then we have a kind of next outcome that is what we call the critical analysis. This is a little bit more like a kind of a in-deep analysis of the legal and ethical tools that we have right now. And we have already finished with that. I think it is available. And what we want to do with this is to point out what are the main issues and gaps related to the regulations and try to help the Commission face all those ones. So that's what we get in the critical analysis. Then we got the report on governance that I think it's one of the most interesting outcomes that we are bringing, because we thought at the beginning of this project that one of the main issues that we have when we are dealing with ICT and the ethical and legal issues is that the typical traditional tools that serve to monitor all those projects, such as, for example, ethics committees, are not so well prepared for dealing with data protection issues and so on. So we're just trying to to compare different schemes that have been created at the EU level to face these issues, and we are trying to propose new alternatives that could serve well to that proposal. That's why it is the governance report. Then we got a code of conduct. The code of conduct, as you all know, it's just a tool that it's foreseen in the Gdpr, and it's helping all ICT developers and so on to have a kind of common ground, have a kind of tool that could serve them well to ensure that at least they can demonstrate that some things are being well done in terms of this code of conduct, and could serve also well to work with other companies, even from the outside of the EU. Then we have the handbook for journalists. The handbook for journalists is quite a special outcome that we have. It is devoted to journalists because journalists are usually working with a lot of personal data, and we need them to do it well. We need them to understand what are the limits on data processing and how things should be done. Okay, so that is a pretty strategic sector for us. So we are just addressing them with this outcome. And finally, we get a pretty nice citizens info pack. This is the type of outcome that I really like, because it's an outcome that is providing information to citizens on some sensitive issues regarding the data protection, and especially we are trying to adapt that to vulnerable populations so as to make all these kind of data protection stuff more easy to understand for them. So I think that I'm quite proud of that, especially because we are also incorporating right now something that is essential to me, which is that we are helping all of them to understand how they could really, get empowered and defend the rights if they somehow have not been adequately addressed by those who are processing the data. So that's more or less what we have in the Panelfit project. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation, and really looking forward to receive your news from now on. So that's more or less what we have. And I guess that now it should be time to move on, Patricia, if I'm not wrong. So I think that we could already start with the next presentations. I'm now that you can see me. So Patricia, we can move on with the first speaker, if I'm not wrong. Yep. Patricia? Yep.
Sorry,
Okay.
I was muted. So
Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
you can introduce her if you want.
Okay, that's great. So the first speaker is Olga Kotsopoulou from the Brugge University of Brussels. Sorry if I didn't really pronounce it well, Olga, but I think I did it, but I'm never sure. So she will be introducing the project Cyber Trust. So Olga, as soon as you like, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. I will now try to share my screen so you can tell me once it's there.
Yep, we can see it.
Great, because I can't.
Okay.
Okay, super. Yeah, perfect. Give me just a moment that I can make it big. Okay, great. So, yeah, hello everyone. My name is Olga Kotsopoulou and I'm a researcher at the Law Science Technology and Society Research Group at the Free University of Brussels. So I knew you pronounced my name very correctly. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to present. I would like first of all to thank the organizers of this event for organizing this event, but also for inviting me, and especially Patricia for being in communication with me all the previous days. I will present to you the Cybertrust project, and we will see the issues at stake, but because I'm a positive person, I think I would like to focus more on the way forward. So, first of all, I would like to say that I am sure that none of you, that everybody in this virtual room has actually been affected one way or another by phishing or smishing scams, either directly or indirectly. These scams are actually becoming better and better and more convincing, and they also adapt to the new themes. For instance, you can see here that they adapt so well to the new themes that Europol and other authorities needed in Europe, but also worldwide. They have set up special web pages that they keep informing individuals and other authorities about new cyber threats that arise every day. Some of them are being even updated every 2 or 3 days with new information. So this rise in cyber threats, not only scams but also other cyber threats, is evident and is being reported in many different publications. One of them, a very recent one from a couple of weeks ago, is the new ENISA report on the threat landscape. There it's stated that cybersecurity attacks continue to increase not only in numbers but also in impact. So I just want a little bit to support my argument that there's nobody who is unaffected by this phenomenon. This is a very nice figure that is again found in this ENISA report that shows the sectors that have been affected by cyber security incidents. And you can see that the 4 most targeted sectors, of course, the first one is the digital service providers. The second one is government and public administration. The third one, which is actually something very interesting because we saw an explosive rise the last years, also during the pandemic, is the healthcare and medical sector. And this pink column actually represents the general public. So everybody could be affected by this kind of cyber threats. So what is Cybertrust and how it relates to the things I just presented to you? Cybertrust was a Horizon 2020 project in the digital security focus area, which ran from May 2018 until July 2021. It has been officially concluded, and the coordinator was the Center for Security Studies from Greece. Our role in the project for the VUB, the role for VUB in the project was that we were work package 3 leaders. That means that we scrutinized legal issues with respect to data protection and privacy. But that was the technicalities about Cybertrust, but what is the essence of Cybertrust? That was actually a very difficult question that we had to answer. Also, we as partners of the consortium and the CTI, one of our partners, actually did a lot of work in having individual bilateral interviews with each one of us in order to understand what the essence of this project is from many different points of view, because we were a very highly cross-disciplinary consortium. I decided that the best way to present it to you is by giving you the name and going through it word by word. So Cybertrust is a platform, which means that provides a multitude of services. The main 3 services are related to cyber threat intelligence, detection, and mitigation. It is advanced, meaning that it goes well beyond the current state of the art. And its main aim is to create a system and safeguards that would actually realize and practice the so-called trusted Internet of Things. In other words, we're speaking about a highly complex cross-disciplinary system with many and diverse beneficiaries. So the Cybertrust Consortium had to come up with many scenarios and ideas and use cases where the platform would be useful. Actually, it was a very complicated and lengthy procedure, which led to a very large deliverable. Today to you, I'm just presenting a very simplistic use case where the Cybertrust platform could be potentially useful. So we have an individual who registers a smart TV in the Cybertrust platform. This could happen either directly if the individual has access to it, or through, for instance, a third party, a telecommunications provider who provides this service to their users. And then a cyber attack happens again that targets this TV, which could have would create potentially more threats for other devices or for the whole smart home network and so forth. So the Cybertrust added value here would be that the system would detect and mitigate the attacks. Of course, that the mitigation and the detection would depend on the parameters set in its case, and should also enable the legal proceedings in case that's something that the user would like to proceed with, and of course also access to electronic evidence if necessary again. So by presenting you this very simplistic use case, I just opened the Pandora's box because I'm sure immediately some of you would recognize the challenges because that was a very nice use case, but somebody who is familiar with cybersecurity legal challenges would immediately come up with several questions. So some of those questions we had to answer was that how are mitigations act calibrated? Should there be a human in the loop, or everything is automated, especially because this particular system uses AI, artificial intelligence. What about special Internet of Things devices, such as live supporting devices or devices which allow business continuity? Can we just deactivate them to protect other devices or the whole network? What acts can be performed when you try to prevent, detect, or mitigate an attack? Should the user be alerted? When? How? Can data about cyber attacks be retained? For how long? Under which conditions law enforcement agencies can have access to this data? Can evidentiary material be stored on distributed ledger technologies? And many, 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 many more questions. So I'm not going to give you answers to those questions because actually I think by also looking at the PanelFit project, which was very useful for us because it's a project that actually ran in parallel with our project. And as I was saying before to Patricia, I was aware of this project before being invited to this panel because I think you've done a great job at providing guidelines for ICT projects. I'm going to present to you how we tried to answer this question, so the procedural aspects. And to do that, here you see the general scheme. You possibly are not able to read in detail what is written in each of these 7 steps, but we will see them while I continue my presentation one by one. So we chose to use an impact assessment model, which it was to an extent based on guidelines and other best practice in the field. And I will skip the slide where we say why we use this impact assessment model and why this impact assessment model also included the data protection impact assessment. And I will go directly to the first step. So as I said, it's an impact assessment model which is broader than a data protection impact assessment. However, the data protection impact assessment is a quite big part of this model. First step, as in the majority of these models, is to establish the legal and regulatory framework, and that happened at the beginning of the project. The 3 main pillars we recognized was the privacy and data protection, cybercrime and cybersecurity, with emphasis on the use of artificial intelligence, and the handling of electronic evidence with emphasis on the use of distributed ledger technologies. The second step was a first-wide consultation among partners to define together the way forward. That means, and this happened in parallel with the discussions on the initial architecture. That means that we as legal partners, we were in constant dialogue with the technical manager and the project coordinator in order to identify the key partners for the procedure. And our aim was to get the first impression of the desired design, but also the concerns and questions thereof. In this stage, we also defined the need for an assessment, and we agreed on the assessment methodology. We did this through a brief questionnaire, and we held a very big number of ad hoc bilateral meetings. Our third step, which was actually the most intense from a collaboration point of view, was the carrying out, completing, and reporting about this assessment, which happened in parallel with the discussions on the final architecture. Again, we did this through questionnaires, and we encouraged the partners. Our aim was to assess each component separately because we spoke about a huge platform with many, many different components and highly complexity. But we encouraged the partners to see this, even though they were assessing the components separately, to see them through the context of the overall system. And we did this both with respect to the intended data processing during the project, but also the intended data processing after the project, in case the platform would be marketed. In this stage, 3 elements were very important. The timing, we saw that the partners needed a lot of time to understand our questions and to go through them, to complete them, and flexibility from our side, because the partners came several times asking to update things, but we also had to be in constant discussion with them and asking for more updates, since the design was developing really, really fast. And precision, meaning that even though we all communicated in English, we realized that even though we use the same terms, we actually mean totally different things depending on our backgrounds. So we established kind of a very simple glossary, which we kept updating when new terms were coming up that were creating confusion. So the steps 4, 5, and 6, I will speak about them all together. So after we finished our impact assessment and we completed our report, we organized a law and ethics workshop to discuss and validate the impact assessment outcomes. So an important part about that is that because Cybertrust was, as I said, a very highly complex platform with many, many different services, we tried to do this at the same time with a preliminary deliberation on the system workflows, because that would also mean new data flows for us. And that was actually a very wise decision. And then after we had the workshop, we tried to continually have communication with all the partners during the development. And for that, we established legal and ethics key performance indicators, but we also continued keeping the partners informed of any updates with respect to new developments at the legal and regulatory level. And last but not least, our sixth step was to do a final check before the pilots to see that all these recommendations have been taken on board, again through questionnaire that was completed by the technical manager and the project coordinator. Through these 3 steps, there has been, as I said, a lot of cooperation among the partners. The Cybertrust project was a very successful project with regards to publications. We had more than 50 publications in total. And here you can see the publications that we had with respect to the legal issues. We had some articles, but we also had blog posts. And you see that we had to cover many different topics. So we also had 3 books related to these issues, again, all of them covering at least one legal topic. And of course, we also thought that we were not alone in finding solutions and addressing these challenges. There are several other projects that are dealing with similar issues, so we tried to open up the discussion by organizing events in cooperation and in synergy with other Horizon 2020 projects, and also bringing the topics in highly estimated events in the field, like the Computers, Data Protection and Privacy, the CPDP conference. Again, engaging the dialogue, also external and not only internal participants. So our final step has to do with the review and the second assessment report, which also coincided with the end of the project life cycle. We invited the partners to review the information that had given to us in the first stage and update the report. We went back to step 4 and we saw what the problems were. The step 4 was the workshop with respect to law and ethics, to see what was pending, and we tried to see how that was actually in practice tackled. And something I didn't say is that in our first report, we tried to translate a lot of the text into operational tables that are easily, because our technical partners are very used in working with tables and figures. So we tried to adapt to it. So we had a lot of data matrices, we had the risk response tables, and what we did in our last report was to include further schemes and further tables, also concerning new topics, for instance, the ecosystem of Cybertrust and the actors. And finally, we also addressed additional issues, including the impact of the COVID-19. And with that, I'm concluding my presentation. So we saw that the number of interconnected devices is increasing, and so do the security incidents. We saw how the Cybertrust project can contribute to that. We saw the challenges we are faced with during the design of the platform as a cybersecurity project, depending on novel technologies. But we also saw the procedural aspects of how to tackle these challenges. And you also saw the Cybertrust related material, where you can find a lot more information about what I discussed with you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Olga, for this nice presentation. And now it's time for any questions that our all those people being present could really make. I don't know if the chat is working well to write those questions. If this is not the case and you cannot write them down there, you could just directly, intervene and ask your questions directly. Okay, so no problem about that. In the meantime, Olga, I got at least one question that comes to my mind, or maybe 2, because I don't know, maybe I know those are quite hard to answer questions, but in my mentality, one thing that always happens is that when we are talking about Internet of Things, there's something that I think it's really necessary, which is that human beings should not always be part of this data processing, because otherwise we would get crazy. That's all. I mean, we just need, the things to interact between them without our intervention. Otherwise, it's not possible. So the main problem that we are continuously having here is, where should we put those boundaries? Because in general, for example, when you get that, it's like, you give a kind of essential consent at the very beginning, just allowing the devices to do the things in the way they do. But then it's pretty difficult to find a way to reverse this kind of doing at some point. And what's more, sometimes it could have even dramatic consequences if the human being, if the subject, just starts interrupting things. Because, for example, if some different things depend on each other, and then one of the data subjects just interrupts the flow of the data, then all the related devices could suffer terrible consequences. So at that point, we could even think about the kind of responsibility for doing something that really was not a good idea. So it's, in my opinion, it's very difficult to deal with these things, because in theory, you must handle that and you should be empowered to do whatever you want with your data and interrupt the flow. But on practice, I think it's very difficult to implement something like that when all things are connected and those are different data subjects related. So what's your opinion, Olga? How could we deal with that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thank you very much. And it is actually indeed something that I think it bothered us, it bugged us from the beginning of the project till the end of the project, especially because we were very lucky that our technical partners, they were very aware of also issues outside of technical issues. And that's why we were also very encouraged to be able to speak with them whenever this kind of issues arise. This one was very difficult. And actually, that's why we decided to have two levels of, let's say, operation of the system. One level should be more configurable. That means that the user themselves, depending on their ability and the advancement with respect to technical issues, could also play a role and take decisions and approve or disapprove mitigation actions. That would be more, for instance, at the level of an expert user. And then we would also have other users who we would also have the fully automated, let's say, mitigation program, which basically another user who would not feel comfortable with taking decisions by themselves, but also, I would say, a lot of users who do not cannot take decisions in this case, because this platform may be provided to them through a third party and not directly. So this could be like a bundle that the telecommunication provider offers to you when you buy your smart home package. That it would be automated, and then the system would decide a little bit by itself, let's say, the mitigation actions. However, another issue is also when and how the user should be alerted when a cyber attack takes place, because we also have the case that a potential cyber attack, the system might think that there's a cyber attack taking place, but actually this was not completed or it was not successful, or so in that case nothing really happened. Does the user really need to know that there was a potential there for a cyber attack or not? Would there be notification fatigue if we would inform it all the time? Would we create a scare out for no reason? That was all questions that were taken into account. In the end, we decided to go towards a minimum notification model, which would cover the series of the threats. But this is again something that can be customizable. So the conclusion is that with the partners, we decided that we needed to create the most customizable platform possible. And configurable platform possible, because also cybersecurity systems work differently depending in the context that they are being used. Meaning that the users might have different needs in different contexts, and that's the platform, in order to have also better market possibilities, should be most configurable.
Okay. So that's good. Thank you. So good to know that indeed I know that it's a very difficult thing to live with. Yeah. There are not perfect answers to anything like that. Anyway, we got another question that's coming from the chat. Anna is asking you this. If I have understood it correctly, the Cyber Trust platform only collects vulnerabilities and attacks, and then any personal data is collected, except for the user's own information. Is it correct? What type of personal info is gathered?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, thank you very much, Anna. That's also a very good question. So as I said in the report, we have detailed data matrices. We really asked the partners to go through all the data, the workflows, and then to the workflows, there were data flows attached. And basically document what personal data would be gathered. Actually, as is in the case with many cybersecurity systems, a big number, it is when the system is actually operational, it is very likely that a very big number, a very large amount of personal data will be gathered. And this could include potentially everything because you can never know which devices might be attacked or targeted. However, something very important in our platform was that the partners decided that all the inter-platform communications refer only to anonymized data. Meaning that when the data flow, that was also done for security reasons, meaning that the data, when they flow from each component to the other, they are anonymized. So personal data is only used for very minimum, for the minimum necessary. Just to say here that specifically for cybersecurity projects, we don't only take into account the General Data Protection Regulation and Recital 49, where there's legitimate interest when it comes to security. For the data controller to gather personal data and collect personal data when it comes to security incidents, but also the e-privacy directive and the forthcoming e-privacy regulation. So there, I cannot really go into detail about the personal data, but as I said, it can be many different types of personal data. But as you say, Anna, indeed, one of the most of the components focus more on vulnerabilities and information about attacks.
Okay, thank you so much, Olga. It was really nice, to hear these all very complex things that you have to deal with indeed. So really, thank you so much. And now it's time to move for the next project. So let me introduce to you the next ones who will be presenting. Those are Eliseo Venegas and Esther Aguilera from NTT Data, representing the project SOTER. Please, the floor is yours.
Hi.
Hi, good morning.
Okay, just give me 1 second.
Okay.
Okay. Wait. Okay, now can you see my screen?
Yep, we can see your screen.
Perfect. Oh. Well, okay. So today we are going to talk about SOTER. First of all, I'm going to try to explain a little bit what SOTER is, and after that, my colleague Eliseo is going to explain legal issues around SOTER onboarding. Okay. SOTER is a project founded by the European Commission within the Horizon 2020 framework, and with us, NTT Data has led a consortium of 9 European countries with the purpose of developing an innovative, secure, and highly configurable onboarding platform. Well, SOTER will finish in February 2022. Between these 9 partners, we have 5 technical partners that has provided us with their solution in order to provide the different solution integrated in the onboarding processes. They are NTT Data, the Real Casa de Moneda, Trunomi, Everest, well, the previous Everest Aerospace and Defense, and finally a certified. And we also count with another 4 partners that help us in legal and regulatory issues. And furthermore, they have helped us to define the onboarding processes in order to offer the best experience for the users. These partners are Liberbank or the new Unicaja, Trilateral Research, Unigrants, and RISE. Okay, now we are going to talk a little bit about the different services that are integrated in SOTER and the partners that provide us services. First of all, we come with the identification services by the Everest Aerospace and Defense. These services let customers to identify themselves in any part from any part of the world. For this identification, we use the MFC technology in order to capture all the data of the user document ID. And also to verify that the person in the ID is the same person who is doing the onboarding, we use the facial biometric to capture the face of the client, and also to verify that it's alive or it's not a picture. After that, we have the electronic signature services of the Real Casa de la Moneda that the services let customers to sign contracts from any part of the world, and we have integrated the voice biometric technology in order to sign these contracts. Because this is a new technology that is really frictionless for the user. We also have the anti-fraud services of a certified in order to verify that the device is secure and that there is not any fraudulent behavior. This technology also let entities to set their own rules in order to prevent these possible fraudulent behaviors. Okay, we continue with Trunomi, that is the global consent management provider. Trunomi what does is for each customer, it set a true ID to identify that customer. And after that, for each consent the customer is given during the onboarding process, it generates a third ID, to identify that consent with the customer, and verify also that all the consent that have to be done during the onboarding process are given. Okay, we come back again with the Real Casa de Moneda. This time it plays like a digital notary rule in order to verify that all contract has been signed and to have the custody of that contract, also of all the data that is stored during the onboarding process. In order to secure and custody that data, they use a service called timestamping that stamp all this data and verify that nothing has changed. In a case of litigation, sorry. And finally, we have also the support portals because due to the actual European regulation, all the onboarding processes has to be approved or validated by a back office agent. In SOTER, we are integrated with Salesforce and CAD, but of course, we will be able to integrate any other third party. And now now that we know more or less what is SOTER and the services that are involved in the onboarding process, we are going to see which are the benefits of SOTER between the traditional onboarding processes. First of all, the client can complete the onboarding process in the same platform. So she or he doesn't have to add any additional information through other channel, because all the information required is getting from this process. We also offer a modular solution. This means that we can integrate another third party easily and with a low cost. We also, with the use of MFC technology and biometric and voice biometric technology, have improved the usability. Furthermore, apart from have ICT integration with third parties, we can also adapt to any new regulation that can appear in the market, and in an agile and cost-effective way. The aerospatial and defense solution is integrated in high security environments such as police and airports. So you can imagine the security that we have in SOTER process. And finally, with the chip that the Real Casa de Moneda has implemented in all the new European passport from 2006, and in the 3.0 DNI Spanish document, in a future, maybe the back office step can be removed. And in SOTER, as we use the MFC technology to read this document, we will be able to remove the back office and reduce operating cost. Okay. And from my side, that is all about a little view of SOTER. So Eliseo, if you want now, you can continue talking about the legal issues of this process.
Okay, thank you, Esther. Well, as Esther explained, we have a platform which is in the banking sector, which manages digital identity of users based on biometrics, with the aim of sign electronic documentation, and based also in blockchain. So as you can imagine, this is a really complex technical and legal environment. So first of all, we identified these four main regulations that may have some legal problems or issues. The first one is the Gdpr, which is the European Regulation for Personal Data Protection. That is because we are processing personal data like the biometrics. We have identified also the EADA, excuse me, EIDAS, which is the European Regulation for Electronic Identification for User and Trusted Services in Digital Transactions. This is because we want to create digital identities for users. The next one is the AML5D, the fifth directive for anti-money laundering. We use in the know your device phase, which is know your customer phase, excuse me, which is the phase in which customers have to fill an MLL form to prevent anti-money laundering. And the last one is the PSD2, which is the Reviewed Payment Services Directive. We will take this is out of scope of this project, but we wanted to point to this directive because we understand that in the future SOTER can be used for payments, but actually this platform is not used for these services. So next slide, please. Okay, the first legal discussion that we will talk about is the Gdpr versus AMLD5. Well, this is a typo because it's AML5D. Sorry about that. The thing here is that the AML5D regulation requires to gather some personal information. That's of course there is a tension between GDPR and ML-A5T because we are gathering personal data. The next one is the PSD2 versus ADAS. As I said, this is now out of the scope of the project, and we wanted to appoint us that as a consortium we didn't study which is the relationship between these two different regulations. So we are not sure if there is some tension between them. The next one is the tension between blockchain and the GDPR. That is because blockchain cannot appoint to a specific data controller due to its decentralization. And due to the accountability principle in GDPR, we have to identify a specific data controller. And also because of the immutability of the blockchain, it enters in conflict with GDPR with the right to assure on to be forgotten of the users. And the last one is the ADAS amendment. Now ADAS is in an amendment phase, so we need to wait until the amendment is finished. And move to the next slide, please. And now this is the solutions that we have addressed. The first one is that the European Data Protection Supervision is developing an action plan to prevent money laundering and complying with GDPR. So we have to wait until they finish this action plan and in order to comply with AML 5T and GDPR. The next one is that in future development stages, we will analyze in depth the interplay between PSD2 and ADAS. The next one is that we have developed data protection flows, description, and transparency, and also we made a formal completion of the DAPA in order to prevent to mitigate this tension between the blockchain and GDPR. And the last one is that we have to wait for the amendment of ADAS to finish. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you so much, Eliseo. Thank you so much, Esther. I think it was really a very interesting presentation. For those who are not aware of that, at the end of these 5 presentations, we will have a little bit of time to make also questions, okay? But I cannot resist to make you one right now, Eliseo and Esther. My question is this: in my particular view of this, blockchain is really a headache in terms of GDPR. So one of the, that's mainly because of this idea that you already mentioned. The main problem is that in blockchain, nobody's really controlling that. So that's the problem. So one of the things that could be done in theory is that we could consider all of them, all those who are in that blockchain, kind of joint controllers. But in practice, this could even be worse than anything else that you can do, because if everybody is responsible, no one is responsible. But if no one is responsible, no one is responsible. So how can you deal with this? So I guess that really blockchain is the most challenging technology for the GDPR mindset.
Yeah, of course, I agree totally with you. We are actually discussing how to manage this because it is not easier. As you said, you cannot appoint every one of the nodes as controllers, but you have to identify one main controller. So actually, we didn't make a final decision about this. But
let us know when you do that. I will be quite interested in knowing, because like what in Spanish we call la cuadratura del círculo. I don't know if it can be translated into English. It's a kind of a square in the circle or anything like that. It's so difficult to do that because really blockchain is a kind of circle, so it's very difficult to find an angle there. So that's more or less what we have. Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree.
We will keep an open eye for the future. Just keep us informed, okay? We will probably come back to this, at the we got just another question. I will go quite fast to that, but Benjamin is asking in the chat, The onboarded platform allows to enroll new users in real time, but there is a verification by human operators in back office. Is there any issue with Gdpr compliance in that part? Moreover, knowing that sometimes these back office services are often outsourced?
No. We are this way. We are using the Fábrica Nacional de la Moneda en Timbre because they ensure that there is no legal problem.
Okay, so
yeah, we are using a very trustful partner to do this.
Okay, thank you so much. So thank you so much to you both. We will probably come back to you with these issues at the end. Okay, and now it's time to go to the next speaker, who's Alicia Escobar. Alicia Escobar comes from Cato, and she's representing a project that is called Next Gen Point. So the floor is yours whenever you want, Alicia. Okay, thank you so much for being with us. As soon as you like. Alicia, we cannot hear you. I don't know if you can hear me. And
So Íñigo,
yep.
If we have a problem with Alicia's sound, maybe we can jump into the next speaker, and then we will go back to her.
And then we will go back. Yeah, okay, that's fine. So the next one, well, the next speaker is Maria Bulgeroni from AB ACOS, representing the project RELER. So, Maria, as soon as you like.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm here. I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah, that's fine.
Do you see it?
Yeah, we can see that. Okay.
Okay. So thank you for inviting me to this meeting, and I will share with you the result of the RELER project. The RELER project was ended at the end of 2019, so almost 2 years ago, and was focused on robot development. The acronym RELER stands for Responsible Ethical Learning with Robotics. And the main aim of the project was to understand ethical issue and also communication difficulties around the robot. We will see that the robots are very close to imaginary of people, so there is sometimes a big gap between robot makers or technical people and users. The consortium was very little because we were only for partners, but we were very diverse. So it was really a fight and a very interesting challenge also to be able to communicate among us. The coordinator was Aarhus University, and they were anthropologists. Professor Katrinas is an anthropologist, and they carry on what is called ethnographic field work. Then the technical side was represented by me. I am the responsible for research and development in a small company, an SME, working mainly in digital solution for the healthcare sector. Then we have an expert in ethics that was Professor Kathleen Richardson from the Montfort University in UK. And to complete the frame, we have an expert in innovation economics that was Hohenheim University, and the person, the PI, was Professor Andreas Pica. So, as I told you, the research methodology was driven by the ethnographic studies designed by our coordinator. The basic idea was to look for exemplary use case of robot design and development. Some of them were European projects, some not. And carry on an ethnographic field work that means mainly, in few words, to go to the premises, to the real cases and to talk with people, but really with all the people that may be involved in the process, and from there to get some result to go back to bring back through the real roadmap to developer and designer. One of the main results of the project was the definition of a so-called human proximity model, just to recall the TRL. And I think that to be able to implement this model in designing and development may really help to go toward an ethics by design. Because at the end, when you look at a robot, and when you look, in my opinion, at the development also of many other digital solutions, you focus on the one knowing the technology, on the one having an idea of how technology may be useful. That is what's called by real people the inner circle. So the one knowing very well the robot and what they can get from the robot. But the end user, and end user many times are already involved in development because of co-creation process. But also other people affected by the new technology often are not considered. So the aim of the project was to fill this intermediate layer to make easier and smoother the transferring of the robot to the end user. I think that, as I told you, this is applicable to many other technology, but I think that robotics is an exemplary case, because here we have also a big contribution from science fiction, from imaginaries of people. So really we have two very different worlds. On one side, we have robot makers that and robot developers that in most of cases are very involved and very interested in the technical development, in how the machine works. For them, the robot is a machine. On the other side, we have many times end users that are thinking of a robot as a wonderful creature able to solve a lot of problems. It is due to science fiction. It is also due many times to advertising, where we always see robots working perfectly. In the middle, we have reality, and reality is a place where a robot and person need to meet. Being the technical partner in this project, we had a lot of difficulties also from the beginning to create a common language, to fully understand the view of our partner. So during the project, we developed two tools, mainly oriented to technical people and to end user, to better explain the issue. These two tools are one interactive toolbox, that is an interactive way to show the real roadmap, and a board game to facilitate the understanding of a more cooperative process in developing and in designing. So we have already told in the previous presentation of the importance of a common language. So to create a real multidisciplinary engagement, we need to create a common language, and we will see how. To present data in a concise writing, because many times people that are far from the ethical world, so again, developers that are interested in their work need to be helped to reach concepts that are very far sometimes from development. And we also put a focus on the importance of the experimental findings, because it's quite different when you hear real people, and also to make strongly interactive the navigation. So looking at the toolbox, sorry, this was not my idea. Okay, we develop the structure of the toolbox in two parts. One part called why developing, and the other part called beyond developing. Why? Because when we are engaged in developing, we need to have a guideline. We need to have a clear instruction to drive our work. But to be able to implement an ethical development, it's also important to have an idea of what is around. So to know something of the external world. All the paragraph, all the topics we are going to know during the navigation are characterized by three typical icons. The first one is a glossary, because really a glossary is needed to make a common language. There are terms that have completely different meanings in the legal language, in the ethical language, in the philosophy language, and in the development field. The other important point was also, and it was very important, to give a voice to the people, to all the person involved in development and in usage. And this was done just playing the sentences we got from the field. And this is very important because give a reality to concepts that many times are thought to be very abstract. And also, as a last point, we develop a lot of mini games to make an interactive understanding of what was the point to catch. The other tool was called Billbot, and as I told you, it was a board game. Here, the goal of the game was to design a robot, in this case in the healthcare sector, because it's one of the sectors most pushed today, and to create a specification of this robot by interviewing stakeholders, so by interviewing people, and then to choose some feature to be implemented by the robot. As I told you, it was a board game, so all the players move using a dice all along these paths, and they are able to interview policymakers, therapists, patients, and robot buyers. That are four different, very different views of what a robot has to be. According to the color of the place, you may interview one or the other. The kind of information you get from the stakeholders are just sentences. So, for example, a patient may say, I don't trust a robot providing me any kind of medical assistance. And starting from this input, that are input from the field, the player may select cards that are features, requirements that we may go to implement. Of course, we don't enter the technical requirement. We may call it soft requirement, but are the most important in the interaction and is improving the usability and the accessibility of the robot. For example, to solve the problem we have seen before, it's important to have a robot able to introduce itself to the patient. So it's an effort to put together views that many times are different from what we are thinking of with the possible requirement. So at the end of the story, it was a 3-year project. What I can see that also within the project, it was a challenge to get a really multidisciplinary engagement. And at the end, the main suggestions are two: that you are able to work in a multidisciplinary group when you share the goal, because when there is a common objective, it's much easier to be able to understand each other. But many times the goal is somehow covered or hidden, and you need to explicit it. And when start, listen to each other. And this, all of us know, it's not always easy because of different background, because of different sectors. Also, it's not always easy to start to talk academy and companies. But I think it was a real good adventure we have run, and we were able to spread our tools. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. And I just, I just was wondering when I was hearing you, what were really the important, I dare say, ethical, legal issues that you found, or the most challenging? I mean, did you find at any point like a kind of things that was really stressing you, such as, for example, sorry if I'm saying that, when you find something that you don't really know if this really makes an issue or not, or how to deal with that. A kind of unforeseen issue. Did you find anything like that when you were dealing with this project?
Well, the main ethical issue we encounter are the one related to the interaction between robot and end user, any kind of end user. Two typical examples are the one of the introduction of robots in working environment. Because here you have issue related with security, but you have also issue related real ethical issue, because you know, there is always a strong debate about how robot may be smoothly introduced in the working place. We had also a lot of discussion with trade union, and in many workers union, sorry, and many times this cause a limited acceptance of the robot. Many of our use cases reported also sabotage event during to miss acceptance of the robot. So ethical issue related to find the best way to be ethic in the looking at the end user is one of the key issue, and this is normally due to a missed communication, missed information.
And may I ask you another question, and then we will go for the next one? Yeah, my question is this: how do you deal with issues related to biases? Because it might happen, for example, that robots don't work in the same way depending on some concrete conditions of the people who interact with them. So the point is, did you really consider that issue?
You mean the capability of the robot to adapt to different users?
Yeah, indeed. The problem is that sometimes they don't adapt too well, in the sense that they could make kind of discriminations. I mean, unfair discriminations, depending, for example, if they could make discriminations on the basis of the gender or the age of the ethnic or whatever of someone who is interacting with them. So I don't know if this is really, you know, if you check that, if this really happens in terms of robotics and so on, or what is your impression about that?
Okay, it happens from the point of view of the humanity, our humanities partner. It's quite important also if we use a female or male gender when we talk of a robot. Many times a robot is considered to be male, but going to the main aspect, it's a matter of artificial intelligence mainly. It's a matter of the intelligence behind the robot, because there is really a lot of discrimination, because and that is a strong topic, because there are gender discrimination, there are race discrimination, many times related to artificial intelligence, but many times they are not, I mean, developers are not conscious, are not aware of this, because again, most of software developer are male, and so many times a female vision is missing in our work, in the work, but without be aware of this. And the same is, for example, when you look at computer vision for race, because you train an algorithm using, for example, white people, because they are living in a part of the world, and you create involuntary discrimination. They are concrete topics we meet all the day.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, indeed, that's one of my main concerns. You know, that sometimes we incorporate into the devices some kind of software or whatever that might bring of some of these biases, you know, in the inside, and it's very difficult for the developer to be aware of that, and then it's also quite difficult for a kind of a lawyer to assign responsibilities and the liability and all of that. So I think it's one of the challenging issues that you need to face when you are really developing a robot, for example, and so on. So, but anyway, it's something that we will have to, focus better in the future, or at least we really have to work on this, I guess. So, thank you so much. We will probably come back to you, Maria, in a few minutes. In the meantime, I really have to move to the next to the next speaker. I thank you so much. In any case, Maria, it was
Thank
very
you.
interesting. Yeah, indeed. Alicia, I don't know if you are there right now, and if we could, Alicia, are you there? Alicia Escobar, or maybe you. Oh yeah, yeah. Never mind. Yeah, we cannot really. Yeah, hear you or see you. That's true. So maybe you could just, give it another try and reconnect. In the meantime, we could go to the last speaker and then come back to Alicia. Okay. So the next one is Hideyuki Matsumi, who is from the Brugge University of Brussels, and is representing the project HostSmart Artificial Intelligence. So please, the floor is all yours. As soon as you like, you could start with that.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Hideyuki Matsumi, or UTeach for short. I very much appreciate for extending the invitation. It is my great pleasure to be here. And I am right now a little bit struggling to share my screen because seems like this is the first time I'm sharing my screen with my new laptop. So it's asking for permission, which also deals with a little bit of privacy matter. So I hope you give me a few seconds, which
Yes,
I'm going
of
to do right
course.
now.
Take your time. Take your time. Technology is always stressing us.
All right, so I'm going to do this once more, share. And then I probably have to go for the would this be camera or okay. Now this may be the like a situation where sharing the slides in advance is going to be very helpful, perhaps. Patricia, perhaps would that be okay that I ask for organizer to?
Yeah, perfect, Yuki. So no worries. As you said, this is the perfect situation to do it. 1 second, please.
Thank you, appreciate it. So again, to just make a silly excuse, I switched my laptop very recently, and then yeah. So if that's gonna work, that'll be perfect. If not, I'll continue to try. Okay, so everyone, yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, so everyone, again, I'm sorry for the hiccup, and now I'd like to start my part. And if you can go to the next slide where it says outline, please. Great. So today, I think I have like about 10 to 15 minutes for my presentation. And these are the 4 questions asked by the organizer, which are also 4 responses that I'll be talking about. But at the outset, I have to admit, and then I have to kind of like, give a disclaimer type of information before I start my presentation, because as the organizer may have also, mentioned, our project is at a early stage. It started at this year, March. And in short, our project may not be ripe to talk about success stories, just like other speakers may have spoke about. But I'm hoping to provide, different perspective, so that that's one of the reasons that I accepted to speak at this event. And if you can go to the next slide, please. First, I would like to talk about our project, and it's probably nice to start from our mission. Here, I'm going to have to read it out, but our project, aims to guarantee the integration of digital and robotic technologies in healthcare or environment, and then possibly to analyze their benefits so that we can visualize the benefit. How do we do it? We do that by providing an environment where digital healthcare tool providers will be able to design and develop AI solutions. So in short, aims to create an so-called common open integration platform with the necessary tools to facilitate and measure the benefits, as I said before. And what are the benefits? Again, those are the integration of digital technologies in the healthcare system. So the three keywords will be integration, digital robotic technologies, and then healthcare settings. So that's the gist of the Hospital project. But it's also interesting to see a little bit on detail. And was you able to go to the next slide? Great. So Hospital has 8 different pilots, and each pilot deals with each of them is unique, and each of them deals with different medical aspects. So more specifically speaking, for example, pilot 1 deals with cancer, gastrointestinal disorders, cardiovascular diseases, and fetal growth restrictions and prematurity, for example. So each pilot focuses on different medical aspects and manifestations, as well as how it uses AI and robotic technologies are different. So for example, taking the pilot 1 as an example, it tries to develop and utilize explainable AI frameworks. At the same time, it uses technologies such as deep learning, reinforcement learning, and so on and so forth. Also, it tries to cluster patients. And the reason why I wanted to mention this is that even if we call like Hospital as a project, each of the pilots really has different issues, aspects, and so on and so forth. So we are anticipating that each of them will have different, privacy concerns, societal issues, and so on and so forth. So that's a brief introduction about the Hospital project, and perhaps could you go to the next slide? Thank you. Yeah. So the second question that I would like to respond to is we are anticipating 3 kind of like, issues or problems. And once again, I have to, admit that we are not so sure if these are going to be the real issues, but at least these are things that we are anticipating at this stage of the project. And the first one is definitely the substance. So in terms of substance, there are several laws and regulations and guidelines that are going to be implicated, triggered. So that is definitely going to be one of the issues. But at the same time, the second and the third item are something that I wanted to kind of bring up on the table so that we can have like more detailed discussion today, perhaps. And the second one is, how do we comply with proposed regulation? Because as many of you may know more than I do, the European Commission has, issued a proposed AI Act, so-called, AI Act in this April. It's still at the draft stage, it's a proposed law. And how do we comply with the proposed law is something of a challenge that I thought. So that's something that I'm going to talk later. And the third is academic versus practice or practical work. I also found it very interesting that engaging in this kind of project as an institutional organization, there are 2 types of work that we are expected to do. And the first one is more of an academic research type of work versus practical compliance type of work. And then balancing the 2 is something very interesting that I thought, that can be a little bit challenging. That's something that to be, borne in mind. So these are the things that I would like to touch upon while doing my presentation. Perhaps to the next slide, please. Great. So in terms of substance, there are several laws and regulations and also guidelines that will be triggered because of the project. So needless to say, unsurprisingly, the GDPR has a lot, it's very relevant to the project. And more specifically, there are special categories of data that will be, at issue, and also because of the technology that will be used, automated decision-making, including profiling, will be very relevant. And also data protection impact assessment is also going to be important, and so on and so forth. So that's that. And I may not go into the detail, the nitty-gritty of the GDPR here, but at least this is going to be one of the major laws that's going to be governing the project. Further to that, we also have patients' rights because the project's in the medical context. Humans are involved and patients are involved. Thus, the directive on patients' rights in cross-border healthcare is going to be very relevant, and the national laws transposing that directive is something that we're going to have to be paying attention a lot. Also, because the project uses technology such as robotics and AI, we are very much we are paying a lot of attention to the two guidelines, at least, that's being issued both in April 2019 and April 2021, as I said earlier. The first one is Ethics Guideline for the Trustworthy AI, drafted by the High-Level Expert Group on Artificial Intelligence, AIHLEG in short, and also the European Commission's Proposed AI Act. But these are, or at least the Proposed AI Act is still at the regulation proposed draft stage, so that's going to be a little bit challenging, which I'll be talking later when we think about complying this law. Finally, medical devices regulation is also important here, relevant, because the tech in the project we'll be using robotics, which also has some physical aspect, and that is very likely to implicate medical, and that can fall into the definition of medical devices, and so on and so forth. So these are some laws that may be relevant. Next slide, please. However, something that I wanted to bring to the table so that we can kind of discuss is that how do we comply with the proposed law? And here again, I'm not going into the details of what the draft AI regulation says, but there are some things to be considered. And that's from the second line bottom, some factors to consider. That is, first of all, it really addresses important issues that's going to be relevant to our project. But as many as lawyers would probably instantly spot it out, it's not legally binding at this stage. But at the same time, it's better to be proactive rather than to be reactive when it actually becomes a law, right? We don't want to say we're going to neglect it until it becomes a law, and all of a sudden it becomes a law. We're going to think, how do we comply it? That's not a good idea. And then finally, the text of the law is likely to change during this legislative process, right? During this dialogue among the EU institutions and so forth and so forth. So there, the question is, how should we approach and deal with something that is not fixed yet, but we suddenly have to pay attention because it's important? Next slide, please. And then finally, for the third item, what I found very interesting while doing, engaging in this project is that it requires two different types of skill set or mindset that I always have to pay attention, bear in my mind, which is, as I said, academic research type of work, and then also practical compliance type of work. Those two are intertwined in our project. And for example, for our first deliverable, what was required was very much of an academic research type work. We do research on regulatory landscape, what are relevant laws, what are relevant guidelines, what are societal issues, so on and so forth. So we gather information, we analyze it, we draft how the regulatory landscape is going to be like. But for the second and the third deliverable, and the third one is we are doing it right now, it's more of a compliance type of work where we actually do the, we actually try to make the project complying with all the relevant laws and so on and so forth. So there, I thought one of the challenges or one of the keys to the success is balancing and harmonizing academic research type work and practical compliance work. And I thought that's very, not very, but perhaps quite, new for academic institutions, or at least to my experience, changing the gears or the shifting the gears is something that I thought, is a key to the success. And then for finally, here, I kind of have to be, quite honest that we don't have so much to provide here at this at our stage. For the third question, did you reach any solutions? We're at this, early stage, so we're gonna have to see how it goes. And for the needs and gaps or recommendations for improvements, frankly speaking, I don't think I'm ready to speak on that, but I'm kind of feeling from my research and from my own research as well, that profiling regulation may need some updates, perhaps, but here I don't think this is something that I can provide in detail, so I'll leave it there, and then perhaps we can come back if we have any questions and so on and so forth. But with that, I would like to give the mic back to the floor.
Well, thank you so much. That was a very interesting presentation. Must confess that I'm biased on this because in my own expertise, and I mean, it's much related to healthcare sector, and I've been dealing with the type of issues that you were mentioning for so long, and I might ask a question or maybe a comment. Indeed, one of the main issues that I think that we have to deal with when we are working on that is that it might happen to you that you will perfectly address the letter of the GDPR and the data protection, regulation and so on, but in practice, it's not working. And this is due to a very simple reason. I mean, when we talk about the medicine, there are a lot of, like dynamics that are in there. For example, we have to deal with defensive medicine. We have to deal with the kind of biases that all healthcare professionals live with that. And so, for instance, it might happen that they all, just introduce a kind of human factor in the loop, but in practice, it is artificial intelligence that is making the decision, even if it is not, it is in a very subtle way. And there are a lot of things we have to do on that. And of course, for example, when you will have to deal with validation issues that we all have to when we are working on that, one of the things that happens and has happened to us is that, for example, when you compare the performance of an AI tool with a human team, main problem that happens is that at the same time, you are checking the quality of the human members of the team. And, sometimes nobody's aware of that. But when it happens that, for example, you compare with 10, radiologists, for example, and one of them is clearly working in, it's performing in a much worse way than the rest of them. It's something like happens, and that. But somehow it's like, why didn't I think about that before or anything like that? Because otherwise you get into a scenario that is quite uncomfortable for all of them. So I can tell you that in advance that if you would like to cooperate with us in the future, that will be very interesting, because really it's a field that we really love. So it's been very interesting. I guess that you are starting with that, but you will have to deal with lots of these issues in the future. So anyway, if someone is having a question, you could do that, or maybe a little bit later. I would just thank you at this moment, and we will come back to you probably. Alicia, I don't know if you are able.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Alicia. Oh, that's great. That's great. Qué bueno. ¿Qué pasó, Alicia? That's good
I'm
to see.
sorry.
Well, never mind at all. Just, all these terrible devices and tools that will get us all crazy, most probably. So anyway, Alicia, much welcome here. I think that it could be a good idea to tell again what this is, what you are working on, or maybe you could directly introduce that about the character project and so on. So Alicia, we can see also the screen and your
Oh,
presentation. So
okay,
whenever you
perfect.
want, yeah, just let's go for that. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So first of all, hi everyone. My name is Alicia Escobar. I work in Carto. Thank you for inviting me to this event for make a presentation of our project, and thank you, Patricia, for the organization. Well, today I'm going to talk about our Horizon 2020 project that is called Democratizing Access to Location Intelligence with Next Generation Spatial Data Platform. This is our most ambitious research project that has been recently awarded by the Accelerator Program with a contribution of the European Union. And well, I'm going to introduce very briefly the project, and then I will focus on data providers and privacy. I mean the agreement with the data providers and the use of data for such integration, taking into account that data comes from third data party providers. So Carto is the end-to-end location intelligence platform that combines market-leading spatial data and analytics built for the cloud. And thanks to our scientists, developers, and analysts, we can solve spatial problems to understand where and why things happen. Also optimize business processes and predict future outcomes through spatial data science. So analyzing location data is critical to understand environmental topics like biodiversity loss or climate change, but is also crucial for a wide range of industries such as governments, projects like smart cities, also health like COVID-19 impact studies, and also transport, logistics for routes optimizations, and also many more. So in this slide, you can see some of these use cases and solutions that we have built for customers using Carto platform and technology. And well, if you, for a typical location intelligence analysis, you will need your own data. Well, imagine if you are working on a retail company, it will be your shop's location. Then we will enrich your data with our third-party data coming from public or premium sources, like demography, financial data, competitors' location, etc. And finally, we can build modeling and predictions, like for example, to understand where is the best place to repurpose your stores networks. So the problem for most organizations is that it's extremely complex and time consuming to handle these large amounts of location data. And instead of focusing on the analysis, they waste their time in other tasks that are not productive. So to answer this challenge, we create the Data Observatory, our project Next NDO, that is a location data catalog designed for spatial data science. And we have more than 9,000 datasets available, and it keeps growing. So you can find spatial datasets for many categories, as I said before. And well, you can easily explore the entire catalog using a simple user interface through the link that you see in the bottom of this slide. And well, there are premium and public data sets to enrich your data. And we also now is available to cloud native, meaning that we integrate within next generation data warehouses like BigQuery, Redshift, Snowflake, etc. And it can be deployed in cloud infrastructure for computing, analysis, and machine learning. So there are two types of partnerships Oh, I don't know what's happening in this slide. So we first have data providers that are entities that are interested in collaborating with us and integrating and offering their data through our data observatory. And these data providers complement our catalog with new data coming from new industries and use cases. And then we have the technology partners that are companies fully integrated with the operating environment of NextNDO. So the most important partnership in this sense was signed right after the project started and is Google Cloud, which has leased the way to make the data observatory a system prepared for next generation cloud native platforms. And then we integrated Snowflake, Redshift, Amazon Web Services, or Databricks. So regarding privacy, Carto has developed a set of guidelines that collects the most important and standard processes and methods for spatial data aggregation. So the objective is to establish and maintain a systematic approach to the spatial aggregation methods followed by our data providers, and then work on the anonymization processes, because it's important to guarantee that not only that the data inside NextNDO complies with all the protection obligation, but also to try to attain the highest level possible of homogenization in the techniques used to anonymize the data. So in order to ensure the compatibility between datasets. So the technology for the optimization of Carto's location data marketplace requires the harmonization of geospatial data from many data providers using machine learning and building a common index. And that optimization doesn't require the process of sensitive personal data, because our data providers anonymize the data before included in our platform NextNDO. So we have many standards for anonymization, like tabular data and techniques related with spatial data. One of the most common is generalization. And then all of these existing techniques are enough to guarantee privacy of data source present in our platform, and they comply with all the relevant regulations. And Carto prevent anyone from singling out as an individual in the NextNDO dataset. So all this will allow our users of spatial data to improve their decisions-making progress thanks to our location intelligence, while preserving the privacy of the individuals. So this has been my presentation, very short. So you have my contact details, and if you have questions, don't hesitate to contact me, and I will give you further information.
Thank you so much, Alicia. Thank you so much for your presentation, and thank you so much for being brief, because in this way we have some time. We have like 10 minutes left for any possible questions coming from the audience. In the meantime, I would like to ask you for a very simple question that I always get when we are talking with geospatial data. That is that sometimes I have the impression that, especially in this kind of data, there's a kind of obsession for getting too much data. I mean, that sometimes, it's like, let's try to conserve everything. And I don't really know if this, if it's just my impression, or it's something that you notice, that maybe those who are processing this type of data are, trying to gather too many data and for too much time. I don't really know what you think about that.
Well, if you have a large amount of data, you can make more specific studies.
Indeed.
And it depends. Yeah, it depends in the use case. Do you want this data? So if you are doing something about retail, you have demography, financial, or if you are doing some project about environmental, you have other type of data. So it depends on the use case.
Okay. So thank you. Since it doesn't seem to be too many questions from the audience, I dare say that, well, make a huge, really, you kind of thankful declaration. We are really thank you to you all. We really hope to compensate you for being here with us, during this time. I can tell you in advance that in Panelfit we are developing all the things that I saw you at the very beginning, and I can also add you two things. One is that, as Patricia is now sharing in the chat, we are having this kind of events quite soon, and you could, of course, participate in that. For all those ones who want to get in touch with us and continue cooperating, we will be delighted to do so. And I can also tell you that if you get into our webpage, there's also a kind of extra account that we have produced in cooperation with our partners of ULD. That's a data protection agency in Germany. We are producing a set of guidelines devoted to issues related to anonymization and de-anonymization and pseudonymization of data and so on. This could be, I think that this could be especially interesting for all of you. I can tell you in advance that those are very, very interesting guidelines with lots of technical information on how to deal with this issue. That is one of the most difficult ones. I mean, it's very, very difficult to get into a kind of argument on what are the best way of anonymizing data and so on. So you could have an excellent guide, in my opinion, in our project webpage. So I guess that this will also serve you all. Okay, if you get into this panelfit.eu page, you will find that, okay, with you. So if there is nothing else, I think, Patricia, that we could finish with this event. Okay, so thank you again, everyone, and hope that we will meet again quite soon, hopefully physically the next time. Okay, so thank you so much for everyone.
We hope so, and thank you very much for visiting us, the NTT Data Living Lab. We hope you can visit us in person soon.
Okay, bye-bye, everyone. Have a nice day. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.